Over the past several years of owning my C5 Corvette, I've gotten to know the car pretty well inside and out as I've gone through the process of doing all different kinds of repairs, modifications, and upgrades to the car. For those that don't know, I bought this car in 2018 from a salvage insurance auction with some slight front-end damage. And I bought the car with the intent for it to be a project car, for me to learn all different kinds of things in and around the car. And one of those things was how to do body panel repair. And what I quickly learned with this car was that traditional body repair materials, i.e. BONDO, don't jive well with this car. This car is a little bit unique in the materials that it's made out of, and it's also unique in the materials that are needed to repair the body panels throughout the car. And over the past few years of posting several videos of me repairing the bumper, the doors, and different parts of the car, I've gotten the question of what type of materials are the best to repair X, Y, or Z body panel. And I've answered those questions, but I thought I would do a video to kind of summarize all those things in one video, since I'm pretty much done with all of the body repair on the car at this point. So I'm going to take some time today to jump into the family of materials that I used to repair all of the different body panels that I had to throughout the car. So for those that don't know, the C5 Corvette is a little bit unique in the sense that it uses non-traditional body panel materials throughout all parts of the car. And that statement really applies to any modern era Corvette. Now, what do I mean by non-traditional body panel materials? Well, in my mind, a traditional body panel material found on a car is something like a sheet metal aluminum or sheet metal steel. Now, this car uses none of that. No body panels on this car are steel, aluminum, or metallic at all. When you're looking at this car, all of the body panels are made from really three main groups of materials. The first being fiberglass, the second being something called a sheet molded composite, otherwise known as an SMC, or a fiber reinforced polymer, FRP. And because those materials are a bit unique and the manufacturing process to manufacture body panels using those materials is unique, either to pop them out of the mold faster or just to kind of lay them up a little bit easier and faster for mass production, that means that you have to use specialized body panel materials to repair this car. Now, more and more cars nowadays are being made from non-traditional body panel materials, just because polymers and composites have come a long way over the past 20 years, and those materials really help to save on cost and make the cars lighter. And so when I went into starting the body panel repairs on this car, I learned very quickly that you can't use traditional repair materials like BONDO. They just don't adhere to the panels for reasons I'll talk about briefly later in the video. And so I had to do a lot of research through different forums and websites online, and so I'm hoping this video serves as a great single point source of information for C5 Corvette owners and maybe other Corvette platform owners out there, C6, C7, maybe C8. I don't know those cars too well. Like I said, I'm mostly focused on the C5. So I'm hoping this video and me kind of diving into the details of what type of material you should really use to repair each panel on the car if you have damage to those panels will be useful, so you don't have to do all of the same rigorous researching that I did throughout the internet. So let's kind of dive into the car a little bit deeper, and I'll tell you and share with you the type of material that each panel is made from. And then behind me here, I have saved the cartridges of all the different materials I used to repair the car over the past few years. And then I can tell you which material is really best to use for each type of body panel and the repair that you have to do. I'd say the only part of this car where this video and the repair materials and methodology might not apply is the transparent removable roof panel if you have the Coupe C5. Now, if you have the non-transparent painted version, I don't know what material that is. That might be fiberglass, so you could possibly use that repair. That's similar with the rest of the body panels on the car. But if you have the transparent one, I know it's a polycarbonate kind of Lexan style material, so I'm not entirely sure what process would be required to repair that effectively and also maintain the transparent, capability of the roof panel itself. So just a quick disclaimer on that if that's the panel you're having to repair on your car. So this video might not apply if that's what you're looking for. So just after I had gotten done recording recording that last clip, I thought I had remembered when I was researching the materials that this car was made out of so that I could find the right repair materials. I thought I had remembered finding out that this car is actually not made from traditional fiberglass like people think it is. And so I wanted to go back and refresh my memory and kind of do some forum searching like I did a few years ago. And I was right, so I'm correcting myself. This car is not made from traditional fiberglass like you might find on like a boat hull or, you know, things of that sort where it's got that tan or greenish or, you know, white resin look to it. This is a kind of specialized material that GM develops particularly for this car. So this car is still made from three main materials if you consider the transparent removable roof panel, but those three main materials, correcting myself, are sheet molded composite, which has fiberglass fibers baked into it, which I'll talk about in a second, and then a reverse reaction injection molded kind of urethane, which is what the front and bumpers are made from. So that's front bumpers, the front and rear bumper is made from. So that's where I think I thought of the fiber reinforced polymer, because that's what that is. And then the transparent removable roof panel is polycarbonate. I did confirm that. When I was researching what materials to repair the different panels with, I came across this graphic, which I'll throw up on the screen. And so I thought I had remembered there being a lot more body panel materials listed on this graphic, but it turns out there's only three body panel materials, and then a lot of the other ones are covering the different metals that make up the frame, you know, the non-body panels on this car. So after doing some kind of rehashing of my memory of when I did my initial research, I found some interesting information that I'll briefly share with you guys on what sheet molded composite is, because it's kind of unique as it was specifically developed by GM really for the Corvette, and then they used it for other cars as well. So through some forum searching again, and these are literally the same forum posts that I came across several years ago when I was initially researching this for my Corvette repair. So if you Google just C5 Corvette body repair or body panel materials, you'll probably come across these same forum posts as well. But in one of those forum posts was a link to an article on a website called Corvette Action Center, and they kind of talk about the body panel materials of the C5 Corvette in particular, really just after it was released. So it's kind of like a press release. So this was July 24th, 1998, so about a year and a half after the C5 Corvette was announced to the general public, I think was when they announced it. But in the article, and which I'll put in the link, a link to it in the description below if you want to read the full article yourself, but I'll just take some tidbits from it and I'm just going to read it off my phone because I don't want to have to memorize it. And then I think it's just a little bit interesting, so if you're not interested in this, skip ahead in the video to where I actually go over the body panel materials or repair materials. And but I think it's just interesting to kind of know the type of materials that you're having to work with on your car. So here it says July 24th, 1998, the automotive consumer may not even be aware of GM's latest product innovation, a new lightweight composite material called SMC 3374, revolutionizing the structure of the car. It's a plastic material stiff enough to be a structural part and tough enough to withstand the heat of an engine compartment. Latest in a long line of materials known generically as sheet molded composite, or SMC, this new product from the Materials and Processes Laboratory at GM Technical Center reduces the weight and number of parts on the car. The result in better mileage, increased durability, and in some cases added features for the consumer. Weight savings and superior performance of an internal structural part by itself does not have much of an effect on the driving experience, noted by a senior staff engineer, but it allows GM and designers to use those weight and part savings elsewhere in the car, basically making the car more efficient. So here they're talking about doing the research for developing the material and then modifying the recipe for the material so that it's ready for high scale, rapid production. So finding the right recipe and then scaling it for production takes a lot of adjustment. It's fairly easy to make the formulation in the lab. In order to make it so that any supplier in any factory could reproduce it is more difficult. So a lot of research and development went into developing this SMC 3374. So essentially what they're saying is that this was a new material that they started developing for a bunch of their cars in their lineup at the time frame. but the C5 Corvette was definitely the platform that I think pioneered the development and launch of this material, because it was obviously a performance car, the most performance-oriented car that GM produced at the time. So quickly, I'm going to just jump into, and again, apologies if you don't want to know these boring details, jump ahead if you just want to know what materials I used. So they talk quickly about how it's made. So SMC 3374 is a special reformulation of plastic materials that have been used in vehicles since the 1970s. Unlike its predecessors, SMC 3374 is a lightweight and yet rigid enough material to be a structural part and can withstand high heat without softening. So that's interesting. Starts out as a dough-like material called resin paste, which is then rolled out thinly in a continuous sheet. Glass fibers, so that's where the fiberglass part of the car that I think myself and other people get confused with, each about an inch long, are sprinkled across the sheet. A cover sheet of polyethylene or nylon plastic with more resin paste on it is laid over the fibers, and the entire composite sandwich, so you got your base sheet, you got your glass fibers, and then your top sheet composite sandwich, is then run through several rollers to knead the dough to ensure that the fibers are thoroughly wetted. The sheet is either rolled into a 1,000-pound spool or festooned, I've never heard that word before, in a large box like taffy. At the end of this maturation, the SMC becomes as firm as modeling clay. The protective sheet is peeled off and the SMC is cut into sections called charges, which may be several layers of SMC thick, and is ready to be made into a vehicle part. A charge is then inserted into a two-sided heated die where it is pressed at 1,000 pounds per square inch at about 300 degrees Fahrenheit in about 2 minutes to mold the part. A lubricant built into the material helps to demold the formed hardened part. It is then ready to be trimmed and painted. So that lubricant is really important in what I'm talking about today and what materials you need to use to repair these materials, because that is why traditional BONDO does not bond well to most of the body panels on this car. So a refreshed, revised statement before I jump into the actual repair materials themselves. So the car is comprised of three main materials. SMC, so sheet molded composite, which is a form of polymer, and then glass fibers. So there is fiberglass on this car, but it's just not in the sense that people think it is, where the whole part is fiberglass. It's a special composite called SMC that GM developed. So that's material one. Material two is a thermoset polyurethane. So that's what the front and rear bumper are made from, and it's critical, which I'll talk about in a second, that it's thermoset polymer and not a thermoplastic, which means it can't be plastic welded. And then the last piece, and I'm just talking body panel materials, not anything else in the car, because there is metal, obviously, in this car, and balsa wood too, if you didn't know. The transparent roof panel is polycarbonate. So, kind of fun little history lesson on the C5 Corvette. I thought I'd just dive into a little bit more details on what this SMC material is, because it is kind of again, it's a unique, non-traditional material. I had never heard of it before working on my Corvette, but apparently it's used commonly in other industries like the marine industry for different boat, hulls and things for boats. It's used for shower pans and things like that, I guess. But SMC with the Corvette, that was the first time I had ever heard of that material. And so I'm sure it probably catches a lot of people in that sense too. So it's important you get the right materials. So with all that jibber jabbering and that history lesson, which I hope was interesting, let's go in and talk about exactly what material to use for each part of the car. So here's a quick little lineup of every single type of body repair material I used on this car. Now quickly you're gonna notice that, wow, they're all 3M products. I am in no way, shape, or form sponsored by 3M. I just really like their products. I had really good results with them. And after I had good results with the first one, I continued to just go with all 3M products for every different part of the car that I had to repair. I know 3M makes good quality stuff. There are other manufacturers out there that have similar and comparable kind of formulations to do the same thing, but 3M was easy for me to get, and that was the one I just stuck with for the whole build. All right, so the first material I'm gonna go over, because it was the first one that I used in the rebuild process with this car, is this panel bonding adhesive. Now, panel bonding adhesive is pretty widely used in the automotive industry nowadays. Most or a lot of modern cars that use composites like carbon fiber tubs and other composites like fiberglass use a lot of this panel bond adhesive in place of spot welds and rivets to actually bond different panels, whether it be structural, semi-structural, or aesthetic visual panels to the car. So McLaren uses a lot of this stuff to bond their different panels to their cars. So this is really good stuff. It is a structural adhesive. I even use it in my full-time job in the aerospace industry. But the area of the car that I would recommend using this for, and some of these materials can be used in different areas, depending on, what you're trying to do with the repair. So, this isn't, ingrained in stone what I'm telling you, but I'm just telling you how I used it and had great success with it. So I used the panel bond adhesive when I needed to rebond a new inner fender or wheel well on my car. So I have a 2 or 3 part video series where I replaced the inner fender, which is basically like the wheel tub lining. And that's how the outer fender here actually mounts to the frame of the car. So there's an inner fender on each side of the car in the front, and then the same thing in the back. And then that pairs also with the kind of center tub area where the rear hatch mounts to. But what I used this panel bond adhesive for was rebonding that inner fender to the frame of the car. So this, I had to grind the frame down to bare metal in the areas where it was being bonded on, and then I applied this and smoothed it over that entire kind of bare metal area, because this is the corrosion inhibitor. This is what's going to prevent rusting of the steel frame, because this has to bond directly to metal, bare metal. It can't be bonded to painted metal. And then this then bonded to the SMC formed inner fender with my 3D printed inner fender spacers to help set the right panel gap here with the hood and the fender and the door and everything like that. So I use that when bonding a SMC or composite part to the metal frame on the car. Now, like I said, this probably can be used in many different areas of the car, like with the rocker panel here, maybe the door. So just kind of do your research on that. The product number, so 3M makes all different kinds of adhesives, as you can see. And then the product number here is going to tell you what size of cartridge it comes in, and then obviously the formulation as well. So this is the panel bonding adhesive 08115, and this is the 200 milliliter cartridge. So that's the one I would recommend getting. And then I'll get into at the end of the video, you have to get a specialized kind of gun that should be universal so that you can use it with all of these, because you can see this one's unique in that it is a 2-to-1 mix ratio with the 2 parts of the adhesive. So it's not a 1-to-1, so you need a gun that actually fits inside those 2 holes there. So, but I'll talk about that at the end of the video. So this stuff is great for structural repairs and things like that. It's really strong. The thing to note with all of these adhesives is they have different work times, clamp times, and cure times. So with this, and you have to plan accordingly based on which ones you're using and how much repair you're having to do for that given material. So this panel bond adhesive, its work time is 90 minutes, clamp time is 4 hours, cure time is 24 hours. So whenever I use this stuff, I had plenty of time to work it. I never had issues with it tacking up on me and getting hard before I could get everything set in place. But because the clamp time is 4 hours, whatever you are repairing, it has to stay clamped down with some pressure for 4 hours so that it doesn't fall out of place, which is really important with those inner fenders, so you get the right alignment with the outer fender to the hood, the front bumper, the door, the headlight, etc., etc. But the important thing with this stuff is that it needs, if you're bonding to metal, if you're not doing like a composite to a composite, if you're bonding metal to a composite, it has to be bonded to bare metal. It cannot be painted metal, because that's how it gets that bite onto the metallic surface. So the next material that I used is actually an SMC fiberglass repair adhesive. Now, I had some different nicks on the door here and on the rear kind of quarter panel right in this area, and then the door on the other side as well. And because these panels are all SMC, I thought to get a specific SMC Repair Adhesive. Now this stuff worked great. So this is 08243 from 3M, again in the 200 milliliter cartridge. This is a 1-to-1 ratio, so all the more reason why you need a universal gun and not one that is specific to a 2-to-1 or a 1-to-1, because you want to be able to adapt to whatever cartridge you're using. But this stuff is good. They have different formulations, so maybe don't use this 08243 exactly. I believe they have different versions of this SMC Repair Adhesive that has a longer work time. So the challenge with this stuff was the work time was, let's see if I can get the camera to focus, 50 seconds. So basically, if you have any large area that you're having to squeeze this out and then smooth it, it really starts to tack up and then roll over on itself. It does not smooth very well. So if you're going to be using this specific formula, make sure your repair area is small and you got to move quick. Because it will start to tack up really fast, so you want to smooth it really fast. And the other thing is you have to use specialized nozzles with all of these cartridges that mix the two-part epoxy as it's coming out of the gun. So you're going to be going through a lot of nozzles if you opt for this 50-second work time, because it's going to cure up in the nozzle. So just keep that in mind. This stuff still worked really great. It sanded and smoothed down really nicely. But I would try and find one for that has it's still for SMC but has a longer work time. So you can see this one definitely cures up a lot faster. So this one, let's see, get the camera to focus. Work time 50 seconds, clamp time 15 minutes, cure time 1 hour. So you can see the vast difference between this stuff and the panel bonding adhesive I just showed you guys. So this might be more for like quick and dirty repairs that you need to just get done quickly, which is why the work time is so short and then the cure time is so short. And like I said, I think they do sell this with a different formulation that has a longer work time. But you can see here, this is great for reinforcing and bonding. It's a bonding adhesive, and then great for SMC, so sheet molded composite, or FRP, which is fiber reinforced polymer. So this is what I used for the door and the this door, and then any of these fenders here. So those all great, and even the hood as well. You could use this for the hood and the rear hatch. But I'd highly recommend finding one that has a longer work time, because this was borderline unusable. Okay, so the next one that I used was this 3M 05885 Rigid Parts Repair Adhesive. So again, in the 200 milliliter cartridge. So what I used this one for was the backside repair for the front bumper. Now if you guys watch my front bumper repair video, you'll remember I got this blue stuff. This one is blue when it mixes. I got this all over the place on the inside of the bumper, but what this is great for is providing a strong structural backing on the back side of your repair. So this is not a top side, surface that you want to be repairing with this stuff. So this is like if you have a big crack like I did in my front bumper, or if you have a crack in like your fender, this is what you want to use on the back side to give it a strong backing, but no one's going to see this because this doesn't, I believe, sand down as well as the material I'll show you here in a second. So again, this is 05885. The 1-to-1 ratio again. So great structural backing repair on the back side of anything that you need to fix, such as your hood, fenders, doors, bumpers, even the headlight covers. Really great adhesion overall. So with this one, the dwell time, so this is a little bit interesting. Dwell time is 8 minutes, work time 10 minutes, sand time is 30 minutes. So this basically shows you that this is more of a final repair material. So you probably could use this on the top side repair area, but you're going to want to use this other material to do your final finishing work. So this basically says in 30 minutes, then it's actually sandable. So this shows you that this is more of a finishing epoxy adhesive. versus, you know, kind of like a structural adhesive like the other ones that talk about clamp time and cure time. And the other thing too is, I guess it wasn't really mentioned, but I think you could use this stuff on the mirror covers if for whatever reason you're trying to repair it versus replace it. I don't see why you couldn't use that on the mirror covers here. But the important thing to take into consideration and to note is that these are specifically formulated for bonding to unique materials like sheet molded composite. And like I mentioned when I was going over kind of that article about GM's new technology with this SMC, is the sheet molded composite has a lubricant kind of mixed into the material as it's being made in its raw form. And so traditional materials and glues and adhesive won't bond well to it. So like BONDO doesn't bond well to it because of that lubricant. So you really need a structural adhesive like things like this that are designed to bond well to that SMC that has that lubricant kind of baked into the raw material. Otherwise, you're just going to get disbonding of your BONDO. Even BONDO glass, that's what I tried to use on the front bumper, did not work. So just keep that in mind. That's why you're using this stuff. This stuff is specifically formulated and developed to repair these specialized composite, fiber reinforced polymers and sheet molded composite compounds. Okay, so the next one I use, this one's a little bit unique here. So this is the Easy Sand multi-purpose repair material. So 05887, again in the 200 milliliter cartridge with the 1-to-1 mix ratio. So this is your topmost repair material. So this is what you want to use to do your surface level repair before you go for like a high fill primer. So this is material that's going to be the basically last step before you go to primer and paint. So this stuff lays down really nicely, it smooths down pretty well, and then after it cures, it sands really smooth. So you can get it down to a very smooth finish, which is why it's called, easy sand. So I actually forgot to mention, when I was doing all this research, I actually called 3M and talked to an applications engineer with them and said, hey, I've got a C5 Corvette. What materials should I use for these type of materials found throughout the car? And this is the one that he turned me on to for the front bumper and anything. This is like I said, multi-purpose, so it bonds to a lot of different materials. So you could use it for the SMC, you could use it for the polyurethane bumpers. So this is your topmost repair, but this material has a unique factor that you have to use before you apply it. So that's why there's this kind of spray can looking thing over here. So this was what that same applications engineer recommended to me before using the actual Easy Sand adhesive, was you need to spray this on your repair area first. So this is a I could never say this right. Polyolefin adhesion promoter. So this is 05907 product number. This is in a typical like aerosol can. So this is, like the name suggests, an adhesion promoter, and for some reason this material requires that. If you read the technical data sheet for the Easy Sand material, it'll mention this adhesion promoter in there. So you want to spray your adhesion promoter on your repair area, give the adhesion promoter about 10 minutes to vaporize and flash, and then you're clear to go down and lay your Easy Sand material. So really important that you use this for any areas that you're using that Easy Sand repair material on. I am assuming it has something to do with the fact that it needs to sand really well. So because it needs to sand really well, they need this to give it that bite so it doesn't just completely come off your repair area. This stuff smells really gnarly, so make sure you use it in a well-ventilated area with a respirator. There's probably some pretty gnarly chemicals in this, so definitely use this with a respirator in a well-ventilated area. But back to the Easy Sand stuff. So this stuff was really great for doing the topmost repair on the different panels on the car. So this has a 5-minute work time, so you got to move pretty quickly. Has a 15-minute sand time, 30-minute paint time, and 4-hour cure time. So you could literally start painting in 30 minutes after this sets up. I waited a little bit longer, but those are the specs for this material here. The challenging thing I had with this material was that it doesn't flow super well. So you're using your extrusion gun there to try and flow out of this tiny little nozzle here as it mixes. So I got a lot of back pressure as I was trying to pump it out, and I had to do a pretty decent repair area on the front bumper, so it was just hard to get the material out fast enough to get it down and then use a spatula and a putty spreader to smooth it down, you know, because the better you can smooth it down while it's workable, the easier and of a time you're going to have when you need to sand it. So that was the only biggest hiccup that I ran into with this, was it was just hard to get a lot of material out of the cartridge in a shorter amount of time. But overall, this stuff worked great for any top level repair. I think I actually went in and any repair before I went to primer, I used this stuff. So I used it on the front bumper, the front fender here, the doors, and then same thing on the other side, and also the rear fender as well. So this stuff sands really well, and it smooths, it's really smooth surface to prep you for primer before paint. Okay, and last but not least was really just kind of a general universal adhesive that I bought. So this is 08223. Again, in the 200 milliliter cartridge, 1-to-1 mix ratio. So this stuff I bought just for some random little repairs that I needed to do throughout the car. So you probably could use some of the other things to do this same job, whether it be the panel bond adhesive or the SMC or you know, the backing adhesive. But this stuff is just a general purpose 2-part epoxy adhesive that could be used to just kind of help, you know, bond different things together. I used it to kind of fill in some cracks that I noticed in the inner fender after I noticed a few cracks from shipping damage on that thing. But if you have to just, you know, if you imagine the 2-part epoxy that you buy from Home Depot, I like using this better because you get that extrusion nozzle, so you can lay this down in a very specific bead to bond two things together. So this is, you know, just a general universal adhesive that's great to have on hand. If you keep the nozzles on like this, and as long as you don't make a mess at the cap of the cartridge, this seals your cartridge, so I should be able to use this because this is only about half used. So on this stuff here, your work time is 3 minutes, your clamp time is 30 minutes, and your cure time is 4 hours. So that kind of gives you an idea of, you know, if you need some time to get the stuff set once you lay down the epoxy, if you're laying down a lot of this stuff, you've got about 3 minutes before it really starts to tack up, and then 30 minutes that you need to apply force to keep whatever parts you're bonding together clamped down. But this is just stuff that I'd recommend keeping on hand to use if none of the other things seem like they'd fit well. But not an absolute necessity, but this stuff still came in handy and worked great. Last thing you're going to need to get is a applicator gun to stick all of those cartridges in there. So this one I just got off Amazon. I think it was like 50 bucks. They're kind of pricey, but they're built pretty well and they're pretty beefy. This one is a universal one, so this can be used. You can see the plungers are 2 different sizes, but this worked for the 2-to-1 and the 1-to-1 mix ratio cartridges. So the first one I bought was actually only 2-to-1, and it wouldn't fit in the 1-to-1 mix ratio cartridges. So definitely buy one that works for as many different cartridge setups as you can, because you don't want to have to buy multiple ones of these. And you don't have to buy the official 3M one. This is just some like generic Amazon brand one. Worked great, had no problems with it. It definitely gets messy through all of the epoxy that you're laying down, so just keep that in mind. But this is definitely something that you'll need if you're going to be using those things, so it's a worthy investment. Again, a quick overview on the car, what I would recommend for each panel on the car. So if you're doing the front bumper or the rear bumper, again, these are a polyurethane, they're not an SMC, and it is a polymer, but you can't plastic weld this. And this is what I was saying earlier, was this is a thermoset plastic, which means that when it heats up, it just burns. It does not remelt. So you cannot use traditional plastic welding on these rear or front bumpers on this car. Ask me how I know, because I actually tried it and all it does is just burn. So if you're repairing the front or rear bumper, and use this as the backside repair adhesive to provide some structure to your repair. And then once you've done that, use the 05887 Easy Sand for your top level repair. If you're doing any of the fenders, whether it be the front fender either side, the doors or the rear fenders, and even the headlight lids. I would recommend getting some type of SMC repair adhesive. Again, I recommend getting one with a longer work time. This one is very short, so use this stuff for basically anything. Oh, and also the hood and the rear hatch as well. So basically anything that isn't the front or rear bumper, use this first, and then use the Easy Sand repair material for your top level repair before primer. If you're having to bond panels back onto the car for a structural bond, use this 08115 panel bonding adhesive. Again, this has to bond to bare metal, can't be painted metal, and then that provides a good bond. So that was what I used for bonding the inner fenders back to the frame, or at least this inner fender. So if you're having to bond your inner fenders, front inner fenders, or rear inner fenders, or the tub even for the rear hatch area, use this 08115 bonded to bare metal. And then again, use any kind of just other generic repair. This universal adhesive 08223 works great for that. Oh, and then final tidbit, if you use that Easy Sand stuff, you have to use this adhesion promoter first, the 05907. So that is kind of an overview, guys, of all of the repair materials I used for fixing my Corvette. Again, I'm not sponsored by 3M. I just really like their products. They worked really well, and they were readily available on Amazon and other sites as well. So I had great success using those materials throughout the car. I am by no means an expert at bodywork, so their car is not perfect, but for being an amateur and just trying this, first time, I did pretty well overall. I mean, you can see, I'll show some before and after pictures of the front bumper here. And then, some other areas on the car if I can find pictures, but the front bumper is the main testament to how well that stuff works. I mean, if at certain angles you could probably tell it was repaired, but overall it turned out really well and I'm really happy with it. So guys, that's gonna do it for this video. I hope you learned a little something about the body repair materials that I used, and also the C5 Corvette and the unique materials the car is made of as well. If you guys have any comments or questions about anything I discussed in the video, whether it be the materials I used, the materials that the car is made of, feel free to leave a comment or question below and I'll be happy to answer it. Be curious to hear if you used any other materials that I didn't mention when you've repaired your C5 Corvette. Definitely leave that below as well, and maybe that might help somebody else out when they're doing their research for their project. But yeah, so I had really great success with these, really happy with them overall. Definitely on the pricier side, you're talking probably about $40 to $50 a cartridge, so do the math and how much you're going to need. I think they do sell larger cartridges if you need to do a large repair area, but that's where then you have to weigh into, is it worth it just to buy a new panel if it's not bonded to the car. So take that into consideration, but yeah, overall had really great success with these. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And other than that, guys, I'll see you in the next one.